My wife posted, "Men think they own you," after I asked her not to travel with her work husband. 22 years of marriage, and she chose to humiliate me publicly for Instagram likes. But she forgot about the contract her father made us sign in 2004. The one with Clause 18 she never bothered to read. Her Declaration of Independence just triggered the nuclear option I've been sitting on for 2 decades. My name is Oliver Ashford. I'm 54 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had it all figured out. 22 years of marriage to a woman I believed loved me. A successful business partnership in vintage motorcycle restoration that kept food on the table and gas in our Harleys. A comfortable house in suburban Phoenix where we hosted barbecues and watched sunsets from our back porch. I should have known better. The morning everything changed started like any other Saturday. I was in the garage, rebuilding the carburetor on a 1967 Triumph Bonneville that some collector from Scottsdale wanted restored to factory specifications. The familiar smell of motor oil and metal shavings filled my nostrils as I worked, my hand steady despite the Arizona heat creeping through the open bay door. My phone buzzed against my workbench. Text notification from my old Army buddy Jake Morrison, who lived up in Flagstaff now. "Dude, you seeing this?" he'd written, followed by a screenshot. I wiped my greasy fingers on a shop rag and picked up the device. The image made my stomach drop like a stone down a well. It was Scarlett's Instagram post from the night before. A picture of her and Derek at some upscale rooftop bar in downtown Phoenix, both of them dressed to the nines. His arm wasn't quite around her waist, but close enough to send a message. Her smile was the one she used to reserve for me, back when we were young and stupid and thought love conquered all. The caption underneath read, "Men think they own you. We're not property. Living my best life with my favorite work partner." She tagged Derek and added a bunch of those little flame emojis that made my jaw clench. This was exactly what I'd asked her not to do. 2 days ago, when she'd announced she was going to some business conference in downtown Phoenix with Derek, I'd voiced my concerns. Not demands, not ultimatums, just honest worry from a husband who'd watched his wife's work relationship get a little too cozy for comfort. "I don't think it's appropriate," I'd told her, standing in our kitchen while she packed her overnight bag. "You and Derek traveling together, staying at the same hotel. People talk, Scarlett. It doesn't look right." She'd given me that condescending smile, the one that made me feel like I was some caveman dragging his knuckles. "Oliver, you're being ridiculous. Derek is a colleague. We work together. This is business. Business doesn't usually involve posting couple photos at midnight," I'd replied. "Couple photos?" She'd laughed, sharp and dismissive. "We're professionals having dinner." God, you're being so controlling. That word, controlling. She'd been using it a lot lately, whenever I questioned her late nights or weekend strategy sessions with Derek. Like wanting honesty from your wife was some kind of character flaw. I backed down that night, like I always did. Told myself I was being paranoid, that 22 years of marriage should count for something. That the woman who'd promised to love and honor me wouldn't humiliate me on social media for 1,500 followers to see. I was wrong. I set my phone down and walked to my toolbox, pulling out the key to the bottom drawer where I kept important papers. Insurance documents, business contracts, and one manila folder I hadn't opened in over a decade. Inside that folder was something Scarlett had forgotten about. Something she'd signed without reading, back when we'd started the restoration business with her father's money and my mechanical know-how. She just posted her Declaration of Independence. Time to show her what freedom really cost. The folder felt heavier than it should have, considering it only held a few sheets of paper. But those sheets represented something Scarlett had forgotten existed. The original partnership agreement from 2002, back when her father fronted us the money to start Ashford Custom Motorcycles. I spread the documents across my workbench, next to the partially disassembled carburetor. 21 years ago, when we were young and hungry, we'd sat in a lawyer's office while Harold Winters, Scarlett's old man, insisted on protective clauses. "Business partnerships fail," he'd said, adjusting his reading glasses. "But family money shouldn't disappear with them." Clause 18 had been his baby. If either partner brought public disgrace or moral compromise to the business, the other could invoke emergency dissolution. All assets would transfer to the non-offending party, pending arbitration. Scarlett had signed it without blinking. She was too busy dreaming about custom paint jobs and magazine features to read the fine print. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in 5 years. Vince Torino speaking, came the gruff voice on the other end. Hammer, it's Oliver Ashford. A pause. Well, I'll be damned. Oliver, how you been, brother? Vince Hammer Torino was 61 years old and built like a brick outhouse. We'd served together in the Army, back when the world seemed simpler. After his 20-year stint, he'd become a private investigator, specializing in what he called marital archaeology, digging up the truth when spouses started lying. I need a favor, I told him, watching a Roadrunner dart across my driveway outside. Let me guess. Wife troubles. Something like that. I need documentation. Photos, timeline, communications. Everything clean and legal. Hammer's voice grew serious. Oliver, you sure you want to go down this road? Once you start digging, you can't undig what you find. I thought about Scarlett's Instagram post, about Derek's arm around her waist, about the way she'd looked at him like he was the answer to questions she'd never bothered asking me. I'm sure, I said. All right then. Send me what you got, and I'll start building your case. Fair warning, though. This kind of work ain't cheap, and it ain't quick. How long? Give me 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if they're being careful. After I hung up, I walked back into the house. It felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The kitchen where we'd planned our future. The living room where we'd watched countless movies. The bedroom where we'd promised each other forever. All of it felt borrowed now. Temporary. I made myself a sandwich and sat at the kitchen table, looking at the framed photo of our wedding day. We'd been so young, so convinced we were different from all the other couples who'd crashed and burned. My phone buzzed. Text message from Scarlett. Having dinner with the Phoenix team tonight. Don't wait up. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Enjoy yourself. She wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd forgotten who taught her how to strategize in the first place. The call I'd been waiting for came on Thursday evening. I was under the hood of a 1974 Harley-Davidson Sportster, replacing worn gaskets, when my phone rang. Oliver, it's Claudia. Claudia Winters. Scarlett's identical twin sister. Though they'd been estranged for 3 years over some family drama, I'd never fully understood. What I did know was that Claudia had always been the smarter of the two, the one who saw through people's facades. Claudia, I said, wiping grease from my hands. This is unexpected. I saw Scarlett's social media posts, she said, her voice tight with disapproval. That display with Derek Brennan. It's disgusting, Oliver. You don't deserve this humiliation. I leaned against my workbench. Why are you calling me? Because I know something you don't. Scarlett and Derek have been having an affair for 8 months. I have proof. My grip tightened on the phone. What kind of proof? Photos. Text messages. Hotel receipts. Scarlett thought she was confiding in our cousin Emma, but Emma's been forwarding everything to me. She's worried about you. I felt something cold settle in my chest. 8 months. While I'd been rebuilding engines and planning our anniversary trip to Sturgis, my wife had been planning a completely different future. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Claudia's voice grew harder. Because Scarlett's always thought she was untouchable. Special. She's forgotten that actions have consequences, and it's time someone reminded her. What do you want? To help you. I look exactly like her, Oliver. Same face, same voice, same mannerisms. If you need someone to complicate her life, I'm available. The idea was insane. And brilliant. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. Scarlett's planning to ask you for a divorce next month. She wants to start fresh with Derek, but she also wants to keep half of everything you've built. After she hung up, I stood in my garage for a long time, listening to the evening sounds of suburban Phoenix. Crickets chirping, dogs barking. Normal life continuing while mine fell apart. But maybe it wasn't falling apart. Maybe it was just changing direction. Hammer called on Monday morning while I was pricing parts for a vintage Indian chief restoration. Oliver, you sitting down? He asked without preamble. What did you find? Your wife's been busier than a one-legged cat in a sandbox. Hotel records show 8 separate overnight stays with Derek Brennan over the past 6 months. Same room, registered under his name. I set down my coffee cup. Keep going. Phone records show over 300 text messages between them in the past month alone. Some of these messages. He paused. Let's just say they ain't discussing quarterly reports. Any financial irregularities? That's where it gets interesting. Derek's been charging personal expenses to your business account. Fancy dinners, hotel rooms, even bought jewelry that I'm betting your wife's been wearing. I thought about the new necklace Scarlett had worn to our neighbor's barbecue last month. She claimed it was a reward for closing a big deal. There's more, Hammer continued. I did some digging on Derek Brennan himself. Guy's got a pattern. This is his third workplace affair in 5 years. Previous two ended with him getting fired and the women getting divorced. Professional homewrecker, something like that. He targets established businesswomen, charms his way in, then moves on when things get complicated. Your wife's just his latest mark. I walked to my office window, looking out at the desert landscape. How solid is this evidence? Courtroom solid. Photos, documents, financial records. Everything's documented and legally obtained. Send me everything. Already on its way. Oliver, I gotta ask, what's your endgame here? I thought about Scarlett's Instagram posts, about her smug confidence, about the way she dismissed my concerns as jealousy and controlling behavior. Justice, I said. That's a dangerous word, brother. Sometimes danger's exactly what a situation needs. After hanging up, I called my lawyer. It was time to dust off that old partnership agreement and remind Scarlett why her father had been so insistent on protective clauses. She thought she was playing chess. She had no idea I'd been studying the board for 20 years. The call came from Jasper Grimm on a Thursday morning that started with bad coffee and worse news. Scarlett's father, Harold Winters, had died of a heart attack in his sleep. The funeral was set for Saturday, and the will reading would follow on Monday. I'd always respected Harold. He was old school, believed in handshake deals and keeping your word. When we'd started the motorcycle business, he'd been the voice of reason, insisting on contracts and safeguards that seemed paranoid at the time. Now they seemed prophetic. Oliver, Jasper said over the phone, his 73-year-old voice crackling with age and cigarettes. You need to be at that will reading. Harold updated his testament 6 months ago, and there are some surprises. What kind of surprises? The kind that might change everything. Harold knew about Scarlett's affair with Derek. He hired his own investigator after someone sent him photos of them together in Flagstaff. My blood chilled. Someone. Anonymous tip. Probably someone who cared about you both. Harold was disappointed in his daughter's choices. Said she'd forgotten what loyalty meant. The funeral was a somber affair. Scarlett played the grieving daughter perfectly, accepting condolences with tearful dignity. Derek stood beside her like a devoted boyfriend, which made several family members exchange uncomfortable glances. I kept my distance, watching the performance while planning my next moves. Claudia approached me after the service. She doesn't know what's coming, she whispered. Harold changed everything after he learned about the affair. Monday's will reading took place in Jasper's downtown law office. The mahogany conference table seated 8 people: Scarlett, Derek, myself, Claudia, Harold's brother Ernest, and 3 distant cousins. Jasper cleared his throat and began reading. The first few items were standard: personal effects to family members, charitable donations to veteran organizations Harold had supported. Then came the bombshell. To my daughter Scarlett, I leave my disappointment and the knowledge that actions have consequences. Having learned of her betrayal of a good man who treated her with nothing but respect, I cannot in good conscience reward such behavior. Scarlett's face went white. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Jasper continued. The entirety of my estate, including my 40% stake in Ashford Custom Motorcycles, I leave to Oliver Ashford, a man who understood the meaning of loyalty and partnership when my daughter forgot those values. The silence in the room was deafening. Scarlett's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. This gives Oliver controlling interest in the business, Jasper explained unnecessarily. 65% ownership, to be exact. Scarlett finally found her voice. This is impossible. My father wouldn't. Your father was very clear about his intentions, Jasper interrupted. He also left a personal letter for Oliver. He handed me a sealed envelope. I could feel Scarlett's eyes burning into me as I opened it. Harold's familiar handwriting filled the page. Oliver, she chose her path. Now you choose yours. Use this gift wisely, and remember that some bridges are meant to be burned. A man protects what matters, even from family. I folded the letter and put it in my jacket pocket. Around the table, Harold's relatives were staring at Scarlett with expressions ranging from disappointment to outright disgust. We're contesting this, Scarlett said. her voice shaking with rage. Jasper smiled coldly. You're welcome to try. The will is ironclad, and the reasons are well documented. Your father kept extensive records of your extracurricular activities. As we filed out of the office, Derek grabbed Scarlett's arm. This changes things, I heard him say. No, she replied, her voice hard as steel. This changes nothing. We'll figure it out. But standing in the Arizona sunshine outside the law office, watching my wife and her lover scheme their next move, I knew that everything had already changed. Harold Winters had just handed me the keys to the kingdom. The question was, what was I going to do with them? Claudia's plan was simple, elegant, and completely illegal, which made it perfect for what Scarlett deserved. She's meeting Derek tonight at the Phoenician Resort, Claudia said, sitting in my kitchen while studying her sister's social media patterns. Same place they've been using for their romantic getaways. She thinks she's being discreet. I poured myself a scotch, my first drink in 3 months. What exactly are you proposing? I'm going to show up instead. Same dress, same hair, same perfume. Derek won't know the difference until it's too late. She smiled with predatory satisfaction. Men never pay as much attention as they think they do. And then what? Then I'm going to record him confessing to embezzlement, fraud, and whatever other crimes Hammer's evidence can support. Derek's the type who brags when he thinks he's won. The plan had risks, but the potential payoff was enormous. With Derek's confession on record, coupled with Hammer's financial evidence, we could destroy him professionally and criminally. What about Scarlett? Claudia's expression hardened. My dear sister will arrive at the resort to find police cars and paramedics. I'm going to stage a very convincing breakdown, claiming Derek attacked me when I confronted him about stealing from the business. That's brilliant. I know. She stood up, smoothing down her dress, the same black number Scarlett had worn in her Instagram post. Derek will be arrested, disgraced, and unemployable. Scarlett will realize her soulmate was just using her, and you'll have everything documented for the divorce proceedings. I had to admit, the symmetry was appealing. Scarlett had chosen public humiliation as her weapon. Now she'd get a taste of her own medicine. That evening, I waited in my truck outside the Phoenician, watching through binoculars as Claudia entered the hotel bar. From a distance, she was indistinguishable from her sister. Same walk, same posture, same confident smile that had once made me fall in love. My earpiece crackled. Claudia was wearing a wire, with Hammer monitoring from a van across the street. Derek just sat down, came Claudia's voice. He's already ordered champagne. Cocky little weasel. Through the hotel's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Derek Brennan raising his glass in a toast. He was grinning like he'd won the lottery. He's talking about leaving Arizona, Claudia reported. Wants to take me. He thinks I'm Scarlett. To California. Says he's got job prospects there. Keep him talking, Hammer's voice replied through the earpiece. Now he's bragging about how easy it's been to skim money from the business accounts. Says Oliver's too trusting, too focused on his motorcycles to notice financial irregularities. I gripped my steering wheel tighter. That money had been earmarked for expanding our operations, maybe opening a second location. Instead, it had funded Derek's seduction of my wife. He's pulling out his phone, Claudia continued, showing me photos of, oh, this is disgusting, pictures of him and Scarlett in various hotel rooms. He's keeping trophies. My stomach turned. Those photos would destroy Scarlett's reputation if they ever went public. But more importantly, they proved the affair beyond any reasonable doubt. Got it all recorded, Hammer's voice confirmed. Legal, clear, and devastating. That's when everything went sideways. Through my binoculars, I saw Scarlett entering the hotel lobby 30 minutes early and looking furious. She'd probably gotten suspicious when Derek hadn't answered her texts. Aboard, I said into my microphone. Scarlett's in the building. But it was too late. I watched through the windows as my wife stormed into the bar, saw Claudia sitting with Derek, and froze in shock. For a moment, she probably thought she was looking at her own reflection. Then Derek turned, saw both women, and his face went pale as desert sand. The confrontation that followed was brief, but spectacular. Scarlett screaming accusations. Claudia laughing with cold satisfaction. Derek stammering excuses that convinced no one. Hotel security arrived within minutes, followed shortly by police responding to reports of a disturbance. By the time the dust settled, Derek was in handcuffs, Scarlett was crying in the hotel lobby, and Claudia was giving her statement to detectives with the calm confidence of someone who'd just executed a perfect plan. I drove home through the desert night, my phone buzzing with increasingly frantic texts from Scarlett. But I didn't answer them. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Scarlett didn't come home that night, or the next morning. When she finally walked through our front door at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, she looked like she'd been through a blender, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, wearing the same clothes from the hotel fiasco. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and reading financial reports. The picture of calm control. "Oliver," she said, her voice hoarse from crying or screaming or both. "We need to talk." "I'm listening," I replied without looking up from my paperwork. She sat down across from me, her hands shaking slightly. That wasn't what it looked like at the hotel. What did it look like? Like I was meeting Derek for some romantic evening. But I went there to end things with him. I realized I'd made a mistake. I finally raised my eyes to meet hers. "What kind of mistake?" "The affair," she said, the word hanging between us like a loaded gun. "It meant nothing, Oliver. Derek manipulated me, made me feel special when I was vulnerable." "Vulnerable about what?" Scarlett's composure began to fracture. "About us. About feeling like we'd become roommates instead of lovers. About thinking you didn't see me anymore." I leaned back in my chair. "So you decided the solution was to humiliate me publicly and sleep with your business partner. It wasn't supposed to be public. Those Instagram posts were just what, Scarlett? Just your way of telling the world that your husband was a controlling dinosaur." Her face flushed red. "You are controlling. You questioned every business trip, every late meeting, every professional relationship I try to build. Maybe because I could see what you refused to acknowledge. Derek Brennan is a predator who's done this before." "That's not true." I pulled out my phone and played the audio recording from Claudia's wire. Derek's voice filled the kitchen, bragging about manipulating Scarlett, about stealing from our business, about planning to disappear once he'd extracted everything valuable. Scarlett went pale as desert sand. "Where did you get this?" "From someone who actually cares about protecting this family." "You've been spying on me." I stood up, my patience finally exhausted. "I've been protecting myself from a wife who forgot what loyalty means." "Oliver, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, rebuild trust." "With what?" "Your father left me controlling interest in the business. The house is in my name, through an LLC you never bothered to research. And thanks to Derek's embezzlement, you're now legally liable for his crimes." The color drained from her face completely. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that your Declaration of Independence just cost you everything you thought you owned." She stared at me for a long moment. Then her expression hardened into something ugly and desperate. "You bastard. You planned this. You, and that which Claudia planned all of this." "I didn't plan anything, Scarlett. I just prepared for the inevitable." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I won't let you destroy me. I built this business as much as you did. Those clients are loyal to me, not you. Actually, they're loyal to Ashford Custom Motorcycles, a company you no longer have any stake in. We'll see about that." After she stormed out, I sat in the quiet kitchen for a long time. 22 years of marriage, reduced to threats and legal maneuvering. But I'd learned something important about myself in recent weeks. I was stronger than I'd thought, more strategic, more willing to fight for what mattered. Scarlett wanted a war. She was about to discover she'd picked a fight with the wrong man. The call came at 6:30 Thursday morning, jarring me awake from the first decent night's sleep I'd had in weeks. The caller ID showed Phoenix Metro Police. "Mr. Ashford, this is Detective Rivera. We need to discuss Derek Brennan's arrest." I sat up in bed, instantly alert. "What about it?" "Mr. Brennan is claiming the embezzlement charges are false. Says he was set up by someone with access to company accounts. He specifically mentioned you and a woman named Claudia Winters." "What exactly is he claiming?" "That the financial evidence was fabricated to frame him for crimes he didn't commit. He wants to make a deal in exchange for information about what he calls a conspiracy." I kept my voice steady. "Detective, Mr. Brennan has been stealing from our business for months. We have documented proof. We'll need you to come in for questioning this afternoon. Can you be at the station by 3? After hanging up, I called Jasper Grimm. My lawyer listened to the situation, then gave me the advice I'd expected. "Say nothing without me present," he said. "Derek's desperate. and desperate men say desperate things. But the evidence against him is solid. At 10:15, my phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Scottsdale Motors, the custom bike shop run by Jimmy Torino, Hammer's younger brother, and one of our biggest commercial clients. Oliver. Jimmy's voice was tight with stress. What the hell did you make Derek Brennan do? The words hit me like a punch to the gut. This was it. The moment I've been unconsciously waiting for since this whole mess started. Jimmy, I'm not sure what you mean. Derek called me at 6 a.m., screaming about being framed and set up. Said you and some woman destroyed his life because you couldn't handle your wife cheating on you. I closed my eyes. What exactly did he say? He said you hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on him, then used your wife's twin sister to entrap him at some hotel. Said the whole thing was revenge because Scarlett chose him over you. And you believe that? Jimmy paused. I believe Derek's a smooth-talking weasel who's been overcharging us for parts while skimming from your business. But I also believe you're capable of playing a longer game than most people realize. He wasn't wrong. Jimmy, Derek Brennan has been stealing from multiple clients, including you. The evidence is documented and legal. Maybe so, but the way he tells it, you orchestrated his downfall like some kind of chess master. And honestly, that scares me more than his stealing. After he hung up, I realized that Derek's desperate accusations had accomplished something I hadn't anticipated. They'd made me look like the villain in my own story of betrayal and revenge. My phone buzzed with a text from Scarlett. Derek told me everything. You're not the man I married. I typed back, you're right. I'm better. But sitting in my quiet house, surrounded by the remnants of a marriage that felt more like a crime scene, I wondered if being better was worth becoming someone I barely recognized. The answer came to me as I looked at Harold Winter's letter on my kitchen counter. Some bridges were meant to be burned, and some men were meant to light the match. 3 months after the hotel incident, Scarlett made her last desperate play. She'd been staying with her cousin in Tempe, working as a freelance marketing consultant while fighting the divorce proceedings and trying to overturn her father's will. I was in my garage, putting the finishing touches on a restored 1969 Triumph Trident, when she walked in unannounced. Oliver, I'm pregnant. I didn't look up from the chrome I was polishing. Congratulations. It's yours. Now I had to look at her. Scarlett stood in the doorway, one hand resting on her stomach, wearing that vulnerable expression she perfected in high school drama club. The timeline doesn't work, Scarlett. You were with Derek for 8 months before I caught you. I know exactly when it happened. That night in February, when we reconnected after our fight about the Phoenix contract. I remember that night. We'd argued about her working late with Derek, then made love with an intensity that reminded me why I'd married her. It had felt like reconciliation at the time. Now it seemed like manipulation. Have you told Derek? Her facade slipped slightly. Derek's in prison awaiting trial. His assets are frozen, and his family has disowned him. So you're back to plan A. This isn't about plans, Oliver. This is about our child. I set down my polishing cloth and studied her face. Scarlett had always been beautiful, but months of stress had carved lines around her eyes. The confident woman who'd posted selfies with Derek looked fragile now, desperate. Even if the child is mine, it doesn't change anything between us. How can you say that? We're talking about your son or daughter. We're talking about a pregnancy you're using as a weapon to reclaim what you lost through your own choices. Her composure finally shattered. I made mistakes. I know that. But I'm trying to make amends, to rebuild what we had. What we had was built on trust. You destroyed that when you chose public humiliation over private conversation. So what happens now? You keep everything, and I raise our child in poverty. I walked to my workbench and pulled out a legal document Jasper had prepared weeks ago. Child support will be generous. Health insurance, college fund, everything a child needs. But you and I are finished. She read through the papers, her face growing pale. This is so cold, Oliver. So calculated. You taught me to be calculated when you planned your affair for 8 months, while smiling at me across the dinner table every night. Scarlett looked around the garage where we'd spent countless evenings together, her working on marketing materials while I rebuilt engines. For a moment, I saw grief in her eyes, real grief for what we'd lost. I loved you, she said quietly. I know you did, but you loved the idea of Derek Brennan more. After she left, I sat in my garage for a long time. If she was telling the truth about the pregnancy, I'd soon be a father. The thought should have filled me with joy, But instead, I felt only a deep weariness. Scarlett had gotten what she deserved. Derek was facing federal charges. I had the business, the house, and my reputation intact. But victory felt hollow when it came at the cost of everything I'd once believed about love and partnership. 6 months later, I received the DNA test results. The child was mine, a daughter Scarlett had named Emma, after her cousin who'd helped expose the affair. I was sitting on my back porch, watching the sun rise over the Sonoran Desert, when Claudia called. "Have you seen her?" she asked without preamble. "The baby?" "Not yet." Scarlett's still being difficult about visitation. "I meant Scarlett. She looks broken, Oliver. Like someone turned off a light inside her." I sipped my coffee, considering this. She made her choices. We all did. The question is whether we can live with the consequences. After hanging up, I walked through my house. Quiet now, without Scarlett's morning routine, without her laughter at evening television, without the small daily negotiations that make a marriage work. The business was thriving. Without Derek's embezzlement and Scarlett's expensive marketing campaigns, our profit margins had improved dramatically. I'd hired 2 new mechanics and was considering opening a second location. But success felt different when there was no one to share it with. That afternoon, I drove to Scarlett's apartment complex in Tempe. She answered the door holding Emma, my daughter, a tiny bundle with my dark eyes and Scarlett's stubborn chin. "Oliver," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "You didn't call ahead. I wanted to meet my daughter." She handed Emma to me carefully, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: pure, uncomplicated love. This little girl was innocent of her parents' failures, deserving of protection and care. "She's beautiful," I said. Scarlett's eyes filled with tears. "She has her temperament. Calm, observant. She studies everything like she's figuring out how it works." We sat in her small living room, taking turns holding Emma, navigating the strange territory between former lovers and co-parents. "I've been thinking," Scarlett said eventually, "maybe we could try counseling. Not to get back together, but to learn how to be better parents together." I looked at my daughter, sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, and felt something shift inside me. The anger that had sustained me through months of legal battles and strategic maneuvering suddenly seemed less important than ensuring Emma grew up with parents who could at least be civil. "We could try," I said, as I drove home through the Arizona desert, the setting sun painting the mountains gold and crimson. I realized that some victories required learning when to stop fighting. Scarlett had betrayed our marriage. Derek had stolen from our business. Justice had been served, and my reputation protected. But Emma deserved better than parents locked in perpetual warfare. She deserved a father who knew when strategy should yield to mercy. I'd spent months proving I could destroy those who betrayed me. Now it was time to prove I could build something better from the ashes. The garage smelled like motor oil and possibility when I returned home. Tomorrow, I'd start working on that 1967 Bonneville again. Not for a client, but for Emma. A project to finish by the time she was old enough to appreciate the craftsmanship. Some bridges were meant to be burned. Others deserved to be rebuilt, stronger than before.